The glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the room. It was nearly 2 in the morning, and the silence of our Boston apartment pressed in on me like a weight. My hands trembled on the keyboard as I scrolled through page after page of what I wasn't supposed to see, what I was never meant to know. Her account was right there in front of me. Not a work email, not a university portal. Tinder. The same Melissa who had sworn she was too busy with her doctoral research to even watch TV was active on a dating app. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe someone had stolen her pictures, set up a fake account. But as I clicked, the details crushed that hope. The photos were new. One of her in that blue coat she bought last winter, another in the little cafe by campus where we sometimes met after her late classes. These weren't old stolen snapshots. They were hers. Recent. And then I saw the messages. Dozens of them, stretching back months. Some short and playful, others intimate. Words she had never said to me, words I never thought she could even form. One username appeared again and again, Wachin87. The tone between them wasn't casual. It was familiar, practiced, like two people who had been circling each other for a long time. My chest tightened until I thought I'd stop breathing. I pushed the chair back and stood, pacing across the living room. I pressed the heels of my hands into my eyes, as if I could erase what I'd seen, as if the words would vanish if I refused to let them in. But they stayed, etched into me like scars. I wanted to scream, to smash the laptop into the floor. Instead, I found myself whispering, "Why, Melissa? Why?" The sound of my own voice startled me in the empty apartment. The irony is that I had never been the suspicious type. I trusted her completely. We'd been married for 7 years, together for almost 10. She was brilliant, ambitious, the kind of woman who lit up every room she walked into. I used to brag about her to friends, how she balanced everything, how she was working toward her doctoral degree at Boston University, how she still made time for us despite the chaos. I believed every word she said. But now, staring at those messages, I wondered how long she'd been lying. Was it just this year? Or had it been going on for longer? My stomach churned at the thought. I clicked deeper, scrolling through old backups linked to her account, and then my blood ran cold. The username Wachin87 wasn't new. I found the first message from him dated 2016. 7 years. 7 years of my life spent sleeping beside her, loving her, building a future with her. While somewhere in the shadows, another man's name lingered in her phone, in her heart, maybe even in her bed. The nausea hit so hard I staggered to the sink, gripping the edge as my stomach turned. I didn't throw up, but the taste of bile burned the back of my throat. I splashed water on my face, staring into the reflection of a man I barely recognized. My eyes were bloodshot, my skin pale, my mouth twisted in disbelief. It was like looking at a stranger. I tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was just innocent. Maybe she'd been catfished, tricked into thinking this man was someone else. But the more I read, the less room there was for excuses. She wasn't confused in those messages. She wasn't naive. She was engaged, responsive, even eager. She had called him my secret. That phrase replayed in my head like a curse. My secret. The clock ticked past 3, but I couldn't stop. I scrolled until my eyes burned, until the screen blurred. Every message was a dagger. Every word another confirmation that my life wasn't what I thought it was. By the time the first rays of dawn crept through the blinds, I was sitting on the couch, numb, the laptop still open on the coffee table. I hadn't slept. I hadn't moved. The city outside was waking up, cars honking, people rushing to work, while I sat frozen in a world that had collapsed overnight. When I finally heard the sound of the bedroom door opening, my heart slammed against my ribs. Melissa's footsteps padded softly into the hallway. She had no idea I knew. No idea that everything had changed. And as her shadow stretched across the floor toward me, I realized something with absolute certainty. The woman I thought I married, the life I thought we had, it was all a lie. When I met Melissa, I thought I had won some kind of cosmic lottery. It was at a mutual friends party during our college years. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, but there was something magnetic about her. The way she held herself with quiet confidence, the sharp wit in her comments, the way her eyes seemed to catch the light. It all drew me in. I remember standing there with a plastic cup of cheap beer, listening to her talk about literature and science as if both belonged to the same breath. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. And when she laughed at one of my clumsy jokes, I felt 10 feet tall. We started dating soon after. What struck me most in those early days was her determination. While other students skipped classes or partied until dawn, Melissa always seemed focused on the bigger picture. She wasn't just chasing a degree. She was building a future. She told me once, sitting cross-legged on the dorm room floor, that she dreamed of earning a doctoral degree. Not for the title, she said, but because I want to do something that matters. I loved that about her. I loved the fire in her, the way she set her sights high and didn't waver. It made me want to be better too. Our relationship wasn't without flaws. We argued like any couple, sometimes over silly things, sometimes over heavier issues like money or priorities. But every fight ended with her slipping into my arms, whispering that we'd figure it out. And I believed her. After graduation, while she pursued her academic goals, I started my career in finance. The hours were long, the stress constant, but coming home to her made it bearable. She'd be at the kitchen table, buried in research articles, highlighters scattered everywhere. But she always looked up when I walked in. Sometimes she'd smile and say, "Give me 10 more minutes, then I'm all yours." We built a rhythm out of chaos. Evenings spent cooking together, weekends hiking in the nearby parks, long nights talking about our future. We dreamed about traveling, about maybe starting a family once her degree was finished. Every plan I made included her. Every version of my future had Melissa at the center. When I proposed, it wasn't elaborate. No grand gestures or viral videos. Just the two of us on a quiet evening walk along the Charles River. I slipped the ring out of my pocket and asked her to marry me under the glow of the city lights. Her eyes filled with tears, and she said yes before I even finished the question. That moment is burned into me, one of the purest memories I own. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Friends and family gathered, laughter echoing through the hall. I remember standing at the altar, my hands shaking as she walked toward me, and thinking, this is it. This is the woman I will spend the rest of my life with. For years after, I carried that belief like a shield. Whenever challenges arose, whenever work stressed me out or her studies consumed her, I reminded myself that we were a team. We were building something lasting, something that would weather any storm. I admired her endlessly. I bragged about her to colleagues, telling them how proud I was that my wife was chasing a doctorate. "She's the smartest person I know," I'd say. And I meant it. That's why the betrayal cut so deep. Because I hadn't just trusted her, I had built my entire identity around being her partner. She wasn't just my wife. She was my anchor, my confidant, the person who knew every side of me. And now, every memory feels like it has a crack running through it. When I look back at those nights in the dorms, those walks by the river, those whispered promises in the dark, I wonder, was I the only one who believed? Was I the only one living in the truth? While she carried secrets even then. It's a cruel thing, how betrayal rewrites history. The moments that once brought warmth now sting like open wounds. The memories I cherished have become weapons, turned against me by the knowledge of what she's done. I try to hold on to the good, to remind myself that not everything was a lie. There were real smiles, real love, real joy. But the shadow of her secret stretches backward, covering everything. It whispers in my ear, if she could hide this, what else did she hide? And I don't have an answer. It started with something so small, I almost brushed it off. Melissa was working late at the university library, or at least that's what she told me. I'd called her phone to ask if she wanted me to bring dinner, but she didn't answer. Later, when she finally came home, she seemed distracted, almost nervous. She put her bag down quickly, kissed me on the cheek, and went straight to the shower without saying much. I didn't think too hard about it that night. Everyone has long days. But a week later, when I glanced at the family iPad we sometimes shared, I saw a notification I wasn't supposed to see. A subscription renewal. Not for streaming, not for an academic journal. For Tinder. My first reaction was denial. Maybe it was some mistake. Maybe someone had stolen her card number. But the receipt had her email address, her personal one, the same address she used for online shopping. My heart started pounding, and my palms went clammy. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. People get hacked all the time. But then I noticed something else. Her phone always seemed locked down tighter than before. She'd changed her passcode. She never left it on the table anymore, always in her pocket, always within reach. That was when the unease settled in. I didn't confront her right away. Instead, I watched. I started paying closer attention to her patterns. The way she turned her screen away when she got a message. The sudden late-night study groups that didn't match her usual schedule. The way she smiled to herself when she thought I wasn't looking. Each sign on its own could be dismissed. Together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. A month later, my worst fears were confirmed. She left her laptop open one evening while she went to take a call in the other room. I shouldn't have looked, I know that. But something inside me pushed my eyes to the screen. And there it was, an email notification from Tinder. I clicked. Her account wasn't some old, inactive thing. It was active, recent, full of swipes, messages, matches. I sat frozen, staring at the evidence. My hands shook as I clicked deeper, scrolling through the profile she had created. She wasn't using a fake name or hiding behind old pictures. It was Melissa, clear as day. Her profile read, "Curious. Looking for connection, open to possibilities." I felt like the air had been punched out of me. And then, the messages. Dozens of them. Some casual, some flirtatious, some far more intimate. She had conversations with strangers, with men who thought they were connecting with a single woman looking for adventure. My wife. My Melissa. The one name that stood out was constant, Wei Chen. Their exchanges weren't just casual flirting. They were consistent, detailed, like two people with history. They joked about inside references I didn't understand. They talked about meeting. One message of hers made me feel like I was falling through the floor. Sometimes I feel like this is my real life, and everything else is just a performance. I slammed the laptop shut, my pulse racing, nausea rising in my throat. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was undeniable. That night, I barely spoke to her. She asked if I was tired. I muttered yes. She leaned over to kiss me, and I let her. But I felt nothing. Just a numbness where love used to live. The next day, I dug deeper. I recovered old backups, synced accounts, pulled up linked data from years back. And what I found chilled me to the bone. The username Wachin87 had been in her orbit since 2016. 7 years of messages, some sparse, some frequent, but always there. It wasn't just a fling. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a parallel life. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at my phone screen in silence, while the hum of the refrigerator filled the room. My hands were cold, my mind spinning. For years, while I believed she was mine, she had been dividing her heart, her time, her truth. I thought about every night she stayed late at the library, every time she said she was with friends, every moment I trusted her completely. All of it came crashing down into one unbearable realization. I had been living in a lie. And the worst part? She didn't even seem guilty. Not yet. Not until I confronted her. She'd keep carrying on like nothing had changed, smiling at me across the table, holding my hand in public, sleeping in our bed as if it were hers to share. But now I knew. And once you know, you can never go back. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. What had started as a single shocking discovery soon spiraled into a labyrinth of lies, stretching back further than I wanted to believe. I spent nights combing through her old backups, syncing devices, pulling data from accounts she probably thought were long forgotten. At first, I told myself I was only looking for reassurance, for some shred of proof that it wasn't as bad as I feared. But what I found destroyed that hope completely. The name Wei Chen kept appearing. Sometimes it was buried in email threads, sometimes in chat logs saved to the cloud, sometimes in old text messages she must have forgotten to delete. Each trace was like a footprint in the snow, leading me further into the dark. I found a message dated 2016. I wish we could be in the same city. One day. My stomach turned. That was the year Melissa had flown overseas for a conference. I remembered how excited she was to go. Her first big academic event, a chance to network with scholars from around the world. She had come back glowing, full of stories about lectures and panels. She told me she was inspired, motivated. She never once mentioned Wei Chen. And yet, here was the evidence. He had been there. Maybe that was when it began. The messages that followed painted a picture I couldn't ignore. There were flirty exchanges, inside jokes, even references to things that only people who had spent time together would share. He called her M. She called him W. It was casual, almost affectionate. But the line that broke me was hers. Sometimes I feel more alive with you than I do in my real life. Her real life. That was me. Our marriage, our home, our plans for the future. To her, it was a performance, a facade she put on while her heart lived somewhere else. I remember slamming the phone down on the table, my chest heaving. I wanted to confront her right then, but fear held me back. Not fear of her reaction, but fear of confirmation. Because once I asked the question, once I looked her in the eye and demanded the truth, there would be no going back. So I carried the weight in silence. At work, I couldn't concentrate. Numbers and spreadsheets blurred together. My boss asked me twice if everything was okay, and I lied through my teeth, saying I was just tired. If only he knew. If only anyone knew. At night, I lay awake beside her, staring at the ceiling while she breathed steadily, as if nothing were wrong. I studied her face in the dim light, wondering who she really was. Did she ever look at me the way she looked at him? Did she dream of him while lying in our bed? One evening, I tested her. I casually asked about that conference back in 2016. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. She smiled too quickly, said it had been all lectures and coffee breaks. I nodded, pretending to believe her. But inside my heart was collapsing. I started noticing more cracks. The sudden texts she'd brush off as classmates. The way she guarded her phone like it was her lifeline. The little bursts of excitement on her face when a message came through, quickly hidden behind a neutral mask. It was like living with a stranger wearing my wife's skin. And yet, part of me still clung to hope. Maybe it wasn't physical. Maybe it was just emotional. Maybe if I confronted her, if she came clean, we could salvage something. But another part of me screamed that I was a fool. She had hidden this for years. She had built a second life and let me live in ignorance. The anger grew inside me like fire. I'd catch myself gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I'd pace the kitchen, my mind replaying every discovery, every message. Sometimes I imagined throwing her phone against the wall, demanding answers, watching her facade crumble. Other times, I imagined leaving quietly, packing a bag and disappearing without a word, letting her wake up to an empty house and finally understanding what betrayal costs. But in the end, I did nothing. I sat with the knowledge, letting it eat away at me piece by piece. Until the night came when I couldn't hold it in anymore. She was sitting at the table, her laptop open, typing furiously on some research paper. I watched her fingers move across the keys, and all I could think was, how many of those keys had typed messages to him? How many nights like this were really for him, not me? And before I could stop myself, the words were out of my mouth. Who is Wei Chen? Her fingers froze above the keyboard. The rhythmic tapping stopped, and for a moment, the only sound in the room was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Slowly, she turned her head toward me, her eyes wide, her lips parting as if to speak. But no words came out. What did you just say? She whispered. You heard me? I said, my voice low and sharp. Who is Wei Chen? A flush crept up her neck, and she closed the laptop quickly, as if shielding it from me. He's no one, she said too fast, too rehearsed. Just someone from a conference years ago. Why are you even asking me this? I leaned forward, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Don't lie to me. I've seen the messages. I've seen everything. The color drained from her face. She sat perfectly still, as if time itself had stopped, and then she shook her head. Daniel, it's not what you think. Please, listen. Not what I think? My voice cracked, rising despite my effort to stay calm. I've read the words, Melissa. I've seen you call him your secret. I've seen you tell him you felt more alive with him than with me. So tell me, what exactly am I supposed to think? She stood suddenly, her chair scraping back against the floor. It was stupid, she said, her voice trembling. It was nothing. Just online chatting. Harmless. I was stressed. I needed an escape, and he was there. That's all it was. I laughed, but it wasn't the sound of amusement. It was sharp, bitter, filled with disbelief. Harmless? You've been talking to him for 7 years. You built a second life with him while I sat here thinking we had a marriage. You lied to me every single day. Tears filled her eyes, and she reached across the table, but I pulled back. Daniel, I swear it never got physical. I never touched him. It was just messages, just words. I needed someone to talk to, and it got out of control. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked on the last words, and she collapsed into the chair again, covering her face with her hands. Her sobs filled the kitchen, raw and desperate. But her tears didn't move me. Not anymore. Do you think that makes it better? I asked quietly. That you didn't sleep with him? You let me build a life with you while you poured your heart into someone else. You made me believe I was your world, when really, I was just the man you came home to after spending yourself on him. Do you even understand what you've done? She lifted her head, mascara streaking her cheeks, her hands trembling. I do. I know I destroyed everything. I hated myself every day for it. That's why I tried so hard to be a good wife, to make you happy, to prove... Prove what? I snapped. That you could lie better? That you could pretend more convincingly? Every anniversary, every kiss, every I love you, was all of it just compensation for what you were hiding? Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me like a trapped animal, desperate to find words that could undo the damage. But there were none. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, feel the weight of the truth pressing down on me. Finally, she whispered, I didn't mean to fall into it. At first, it was just someone to talk to. I felt lonely, overwhelmed with school, with life. And then, it became something else. I couldn't stop. But I swear to you, Daniel, I never stopped loving you. Those words hit harder than the lies. Because love, real love, doesn't coexist with betrayal. Her version of love felt like a cruel joke, a parody of what we once had. I stood, pushing back from the table. My legs felt weak, but anger carried me. You don't get to use that word anymore. Not with me. You don't get to tell me you love me after making me live in a lie for 7 years. Her sobs grew louder, echoing through the apartment. She begged me to sit down, to let her explain more, to go to therapy, to give her another chance. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at her, I saw the messages. I saw her smiling at her phone, laughing at words typed by another man. I saw her calling him her secret. The trust that once anchored me was gone, ripped away like a floor collapsing beneath my feet. I walked toward the door, needing space, air, anything but the suffocating weight of her guilt. She rushed after me, grabbing my arm. Please, Daniel, don't leave. Don't let this be the end. I looked down at her hand clutching me, the same hand that had written to him, touched me, lied to me. I pulled it free. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said. And with that, I walked out, leaving her cries echoing in the hallway behind me. The night I walked out, the city felt colder than I'd ever known it. Boston streets were alive with traffic, students laughing on corners, the usual hum of life carrying on. Yet to me, it all felt distant, muted, as if I were walking through a world made of glass. I had left my entire life behind in that apartment, but I couldn't bring myself to turn back. I wandered aimlessly, my thoughts a storm. 7 years. 7 years of lies dressed up as love. 7 years of me believing I was her partner, her anchor, her home. when all along she was splitting herself between me and someone else. I ended up sitting on a bench by the river, staring at the water as it rippled under the streetlights. My mind replayed her sobs, her words. I never stopped loving you. But what is love without honesty? What is love without trust? To me, it was nothing more than an illusion. In the days that followed, I didn't go back home. I stayed with a friend from work, a spare couch becoming my refuge. Melissa texted me constantly, apologies, promises, desperate pleas for forgiveness. I didn't answer. Every time her name flashed on the screen, I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't anger anymore. It was exhaustion. I began to realize something. Betrayal doesn't just wound, it robs you of time. She hadn't only cheated on me with her words, her messages, her secret. She had stolen years of my life, years I could have lived differently if I had known the truth. That was the part I couldn't forgive. One evening, I walked back to the apartment to collect some of my things. She was there, waiting, her eyes red, her face pale. She didn't speak at first, just watched me move around the rooms we had shared. Every photo frame, every piece of furniture seemed to mock us. Finally, she whispered, "Is this really it? Are we really over?" I stopped, turned to her, and for a moment I saw the girl I had fallen in love with, the one who had dreamed with me, laughed with me, held me through hardships. But that girl no longer existed. She had been buried under 7 years of secrets. "Yes," I said quietly. "We're over." Her face crumpled and she reached for me, but I stepped back. "You should have told me," I added. "You should have given me the choice. Instead, you decided for both of us, and I can't live with that." She broke down, sobbing into her hands, but I didn't stay to comfort her. I gathered the last of my things, walked out, and closed the door behind me. It wasn't easy after that. The pain didn't vanish overnight. There were mornings I woke up reaching for her, only to find emptiness. Nights when memories clawed at me, demanding I question everything all over again. Healing isn't linear. It's messy, brutal, filled with steps backward. But slowly, I found pieces of myself again. I threw myself into work, into friendships I'd neglected, into long walks through the city that reminded me I was still alive. The world hadn't ended, even if it felt like it had. One morning, months later, I stood again by the Charles River. The sun was rising, painting the sky in gold and crimson, and for the first time, I felt a spark of peace. Betrayal had scarred me, yes, but it hadn't destroyed me. I realized then that trust, once broken, may never be rebuilt. But life isn't about clinging to the ruins. It's about learning to step forward, even with the scars. I couldn't change what Melissa had done, but I could decide what came next. And what came next was mine. If you've ever been where I am, if you felt the sting of betrayal, the collapse of everything you thought you knew, please remember this. You are not alone. The pain may feel unbearable, but it does ease. You will breathe again. You will laugh again. And you will find people who know how to hold your trust and never let it go. That's what I hold on to now. Not the lies, not the years stolen, but the hope that tomorrow can still bring something honest, something real. And if this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own journey or gave you the strength to face your truth, I'd be grateful if you supported this channel. A simple like, a subscription. It helps these stories reach others who need to hear them. Because no matter how dark the night, there is always another sunrise waiting.